All right, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? I really want to know, some honesty, how many people held out and had 0 donuts? Yeah, okay, one of you, congratulations. All right, how many people had like 3 donuts and don't really want to actually tell everybody, but that's fine, no judgments. This conference, donuts are 0 calories, I promise you. It's been like it for years. Yeah, thanks. So excited to be here. This is my 4th time at Stir Trek, I think, and nothing has changed as far as the light situation. I still can't see you all as much as it looks like I can. I can't. So I'm going to try to ask some questions later with a raise of hands, and I'll try my best to see if I can figure that out. But we might as well get started because it's 8:30. We have a tight schedule, big day ahead. Very excited. You made it to the first session. Congratulations. Therefore, you're basically winning compared to most people. Today we're going to go a little bit of on a personal journey of mine and talk about a product that my company has been running for like almost 18 years. It's a long SaaS running product. I'll introduce that in a second. And we're going to talk about the challenge of software modernization on long-running complex software. So we'll get into it. My name is Brian McKeiver. I'm co-owner at BizStream from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yay, Michigan. All right. Sometimes in Ohio, that's kind of, not safe to say, but everyone's been pretty nice so far this week. My background's technical. I graduated Grand Valley State University way back when, and in fact, today is my 24th anniversary at the company. So started it in 2002, May 1st. Just happens to be a good day, what can I say? But I've always been in technology, developer, mainly in the .NET, Microsoft world, now into Azure and other architecture types of things. And I've been recognized as a Microsoft Azure AI MVP and Cloud Native MVP, as well as Kentico and Content AI. Those are a couple content management systems because my company is a digital agency in Grand Rapids. And our tagline is, we make digital flow. And what we really do is build very complex websites for many different organizations all across North America, and typically there is some high-powered integrations that need to play with these systems. So in a way, BizStream is a 2-headed monster. We have our digital agency side, which is consulting, .NET, content management, creative strategy, all that kind of fun stuff. But then we also have the product aspect of our company, and today I'm going to talk just about the product aspects and all the challenges that we've had. But as I mentioned, the company actually was founded a little bit at the end of 2001 by my business partner, Mark, and the two of us have kind of grown it to over 40 people, all in the West Michigan area, delivered hundreds of products and tons of certifications for all the things that we do. But specifically for this talk, I'm going to introduce our SaaS product, which is called Youth Center. And I would almost guarantee no one in this entire building has ever heard of this SaaS tool, because it's not for you all. It's actually very niche, very specific. It's a government-based application, targeted application, and it's meant to do juvenile facility case management. Anybody in the room know what juvenile facility case management is? I didn't think so. I didn't even know what it was. In fact, sometimes I still struggle. The short way to say it is it's like Facebook for the juvenile world. So as people come into the system, they get a case. And that case is basically like their activity log, all the things that needs to track about that person as they go through the system, and then it allows the state to get reports from all the facilities, and we'll get into it. But it's been going for a very long time, and I'll just leave it at that, long time. But it looks like this today. It's a very data-centric application. It's meant to collect immense detail on every single thing that happens to a youth in the facility, all the people they interact with, from judges to probate officers to police officers to caseworkers, all sorts of different roles of who can do what on certain things. And this view is actually the main dashboard if you're a case administrator on what you see, because you're managing a group of youths and all the rooms and where they are and what they're eating and what drugs they're doing. It's crazy. And when you get into a specific actual individual, as you can see, there's like 50 navigation items. I mean, it's pretty complex what you could do for just one person. And the core of it is actually like every 15 minutes, there's a new piece of data entered. And it's called like the daily log and the activity log, and all sorts of things get tracked, tagged, and that data is sliced and diced so that we can get very large statistics across the entire US actually for how these people are performing as they go through the system. And the ultimate goal of Youth Center is to allow the people that actually work with the youths to spend more time directly with them, because before our software came in, chances are these facilities mostly were working off paper or Excel spreadsheets. I'm not even kidding. Even in 2026, we still run into some facilities who use paper to do all this case management. And it's crazy, and it doesn't work. So we've had people literally in tears when they see how much time this can save them if they're the administrators and working with the youth, because they can make more of an impact with the youth if they can spend time. So does that make sense so far on what Youth Center is and what it does? Yes. Cool, thanks. Now, who uses Youth Center? Actually a lot. We've grown quite a bit. It's 90 different organizations, from courts to detention facilities to diversion programs, which means it's like locations away from a facility or at home. Home treatment is a big trend in the industry. And we're in multiple states, but the story starts with this. The red county is Ottawa County. That's actually where I live and where BizStream is. Many, many years ago, Ottawa County partnered with BizStream to create the first version of Youth Center. And they actually wanted this very large, very complete thing, this software package, just for them to be done in like 6 months and spend very little money on it. And that wasn't possible for all the requirements. In fact, we didn't even know what the requirements were at that point. But we had a product that we had started that was an intranet and did some management of like documents and objects and people. And this was before SharePoint existed. This is a long time ago, right? So the idea of an intranet was barely around. I mean, Exchange was barely around back then. And they agreed to let my company keep the intellectual property rights of the software we built. In trade, we would do more. We would use our pre-built like starting point for them. And it has allowed us to basically partner with Ottawa County, because the goal they knew at that point was they were one of many counties in the state of Michigan that would need this. So they would want to, you know, as we go and basically sell it to the next county, there'd be a small benefit to them, a small kickback. And it has worked out very well, and they're still our partner today. We've worked with Ottawa County like all the time. After that, it went to Van Buren County, Macomb County, and actually as of last year, we have a state level contract to work with every single county in the state of Michigan, and it's a huge deal for us because we've had to scale very quickly in the last 2 years to go from individual one county at a time thing to entire statewide system. And that's where we are today. We're very excited about that, but let's talk again kind of what it was like back in 2001. This is what our software looked like in 2001. It was actually running in a browser, not a very good browser, and it was built to have kind of that purpose of like this intranet where you could install different apps and modules. The toolbar on the left would appear, but you could search information, find it, all that kind of good stuff. So we had to take this like general purpose intranet that could deal with contacts and documents and calendar, and we had to make it work in the juvenile space. And boy, we have no idea what we were getting ourselves into. In fact, I actually went back and found, it took a couple years to even write the requirements with the county. And this is some of our very first specifications, way back when in 2007. And one of my favorite parts about this is not that the fact that we've got a little entity diagram of here's what a case is and a case manager and detention or not. My favorite part about this is the actual security requirements, which, no kidding, said to be defined later. So there's the very first thing I want you to remember from my talk today. Don't do what we did. Don't let security come at the very end of your project and not think about it ahead of time, make sure you think about that first. That's one of the things that we did very, very wrong, and it created a ton of rework over the years to actually make it secure because we had to. Okay? So about a year went by after defining the specifications, and it resulted in looking like this. So we took our base theme, created the logo, and we had a case management system where you could log in and track cases, and everyone was really happy. And we launched with Ottawa County, and it was fantastic, right? And the technology behind this is outstanding. So this has been my life. I hear a couple giggles in the room. Probably the funniest part of this slide is, yes, Internet Explorer 5 was the browser of choice at the time. That's where we started. This whole JavaScript thing barely existed. We were using some VB script in the browser to do some things and writing other code to generate that script, which sometimes executed other JavaScript. It was an ugly mess. Anyone ever do active server pages in the room? Yes, we could talk afterwards. I'll buy you a beer, we'll talk about it. This is the precursor to .NET, in case you didn't know that. So we're not even in the .NET world yet. However, active server pages was the way to do things from a Microsoft tech standpoint, because our solution was all about in the Microsoft tech stack world. We ran SQL Server 7.0. We had a ton of store procedures to do almost everything. We were big believers in store procedures back then. Still a fan sometimes. And then we ran IIS it's probably version 5 or 6. I don't know. It's been too long for me to remember what the version was. But this is where we started, and it's a fun time back then. Things were simple. You didn't have to worry about a lot of things. The cloud didn't even really exist when we started, so we did this on our own physical servers, and that became a problem. We'll talk about that later. But the reaction to launching on this tech stack was this: yay! Everyone was really happy. No, but at the time, it was really pretty modern when it first launched, and that was the sentiment that we all had. So we successfully launched Ottawa County at this point. The software was created, and we kind of felt like this, that now that we have a product, we can easily just resell this to other government counties. That should be really quick. We're going to make a ton of money off this. It was a brilliant idea. Can't wait. And I tell you what, if you build it, they will not come. That's another takeaway from my talk is you can have the best software in the world. It can be the most amazing technology, but if you don't market it and you don't go out and sell it in the field and talk to customers about their needs, it's never going to go anywhere. And in fact, that's what happened to us. And we like to refer to that as the era of neglect at BizStream. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, we're a two-headed monster. We're a product company that basically has one customer at that point, and then this service company and consultancy, and you know what? We had to pay the bills. So we actually kind of focused a little bit more on the service and consultancy side and just kind of left the product to do its thing because we thought it would just kind of sell itself. We put up a really simple website, and we thought or wanted that growth of the software and recurring revenue would just happen. And I tell you what, it did not. It did not. It was very flat, and it took us a long time to realize that government sales cycles are super long. And to be able to get a judge and a county to understand what software does for them, it's a very hard thing without being in front of them all the time. So what also happened at that point is, the world went through some changes. And this whole idea of a smartphone came out after we built the software. And every screenshot I've shown you of the software so far is on desktop, right? Because that's the only place it worked. And in fact, for a long time, we didn't even have browser support other than IE5. So for many years, we just kind of left it. We had one person running maintenance, and we were thinking that this was just going to sell itself, and it really didn't. And then we started getting requests for tablets and phones and all this fun stuff. In fact, that one developer was swamped. Tons of things that we wanted to do internally, tons of support items. This is a fantastic legacy piece of software called FogBugs. Anybody in the room use FogBugs? Okay, one or two maybe. Back then, that's how we handled what should we work on next and what are we going to do for maintaining the software. And modernization was not even a thought at that point. It was just, how do we keep the lights on? So that's a little bit of the history. We'll move forward into kind of how we handle things today and some of the decisions we've had to make over time on how do we tackle this problem? How do we modernize this very complex piece of software? And as you can imagine, most PM solutions today do rely on Jira, and that is where we start in 2026. Obviously, whether you use Jira or ADO or other things, not a huge difference, but one of the things that we've learned over the years is it's as much about what you think you should do next for the software as it is what your customers want to do. So in the last probably 8 years or so, we've spent a ton of time at trade shows, at county events. This is Dave Valco. He is actually the CEO of Youth Center, and he goes to these shows. He talks to the people on the floor who work with the youth, and he does this every time. He has them scan a QR code, and he has them enter in, how do you think the software is working? What would you like it to do? What's missing? And this collects a customer backlog of customer requested items. This is a great way to understand what your customers want your software to do and how to meet their needs. And by having them, tell you face to face or in a form, it's a fantastic idea. We didn't do this initially, and it was a really great thing to do. That now gets its own backlog in our Jira project, and we run some prioritization efforts against those items and those features, as well as many other categories, which we'll get into kind of now. And really, it does kind of come into this idea of prioritization is everything in this equation, and how do we modernize, and what do we do? The product owner on the team, his name is Caleb, and he has to think through all those different things. He's got to think through the customer suggested backlog. He's got to think through our technical debt, sales requested features, marketing requested features, the lead architect's planned improvements, and then this big thing called security and compliance. There's a ton of directions you can go on where you can put your activity, and we're not a giant team. As I said, the entire company is about 40 people. Only a portion of those people work on the actual product. So we've got to figure out how to meet all these goals, needs, and demands, and we struggled with that a ton for over a decade. It was always, what's the thing that's on fire? That's where we'd put our effort. Well, I can tell you, sometimes you have to do that, but that's not always the best thing to do. So we finally settled on this, the RICE framework for understanding of all those needs and requests. How do we prioritize what gets done? People in the room, have you heard about RICE at all from a priority framework standpoint? Okay, so not too many. We'll introduce it today. This is a method for actually putting some scientific measurements behind where should you prioritize features, where should you prioritize your capacity, and how you should get things done in what order. So reach, impact, confidence, and effort. Those are the scoring categories that you put against each request. Reach obviously is how many people is this feature or this change or this improvement going to impact and touch. Impact is the amount of, is it going to really move the needle or not, versus a small behind the scenes change that only a certain few people are going to see. Effort is how much time it takes to build and change. And then confidence is how sure are you about this whole thing, right? Is it a very straightforward thing, or in 2026, is it this new AI thing that we're not sure if it's going to work or not, right? So you take those categories, and this is the formula you use to weight them and come out with an actual number. So reach times impact times confidence divided by the overall effort, and that gives you your score, again, kind of based off using some of these sub numbers of 3, 2, 1s and things like that. And our product team and our leadership goes through this exercise for many of the things we do now, and it's really helped kind of change the way we work, and it's a big impact to this. So I'm going to do a little bit of an interactive quiz here. I've got 3 different features or projects that we'd want to do in our software. And if we've scored project A with a reach of 1,000 And it's got high impact, pretty high confidence at 80%, and it will take 3 person months of effort to create it. That's project A. Project B, a little bit less reach. Not as many users per month are going to feel this change. Maybe it's a certain role, maybe it's not. But it's going to have a very large impact on moving the software forward. And we're not quite as confident we can do it, but it takes a little less effort. If you think about just A to B, those are pretty close, and it's kind of hard to understand, like, where should you pull the trigger? Which one should you bring into your sprint planning? And then project C has the most reach, the most confidence, but actually takes the longest amount of time. Anybody in the room want to guess which one of these is going to get the winning RICE score? A. All right, we've got some brave people and some very smart and astute people. So yeah, project A wins, or feature A, however you want to think about it, because it has the most potential value of the scoring system. And instead of going off a feel or one person's opinion, these frameworks like RICE, they help you actually have scientific numbers behind things. And that's a big piece of modernizing software, is understanding where to put your effort when you have all these different lines that you could do things with. So tons of setup to get to this point, right? And the question of, we have ASP Classic, it's been there for many, many years. Now we have many more customers. And what are we going to do when the new wave of technology comes out? Or things like, ASP go out of, gold level support with Microsoft, even though I think technically it still might be supported. One of the big things is who's going to be around to work on it if it's not kept up to date and modernized and secure. So really, we had a problem because we went through that era of neglect. We didn't touch it a ton. And now we're starting to get traction. We're starting to scale and sign more customers. And it was like, oh crap, what are we going to do here? So just to give you a sample of complexity of our application, this is in millions of lines of code. When you start at the low end, you've got a very simple iPhone game app. You move up into like Photoshop V1, Quake, the Space Shuttle, and you're still in the 4 million or less lines of code. You go into more modern software, and even this is still slightly older because with Windows 3.1, sorry, it's old. Photoshop 6, and it gets closer to over 5 to 10 million, and then you eventually get up the chain of millions of lines of code. At this point, we had 3 million lines of ASP Classic code and SQL Server code. So this is not just like go away for a week or two and try to start over. This is tons of investment, tons of time over the years that we've got to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? And in 2017 is when that number was taken. So now today there's even way more lines of code probably. And on top of that, in the last 2.5 years, we actually launched our own native mobile app to connect to the SaaS tool because there was a big need in these facilities to track the youth as they move through getting food in the morning to lunch to dinner. They go to exercise, they come back. This idea of movement tracking became really important to do real-time reporting for all these facilities. So this is a specific Android device that we source ourselves, and there's little beacons on each doorway of all these rooms. So as people move in and out, the case administrator or whoever's in charge basically scans the kid's wristband, hits the door, and then the software actually knows exactly where people are moving. So not only do we have 3+ million lines of software coding, we now have the native mobile app to worry about. It's insane how much this has grown over the years. And really what I'm trying to say is there's no way that we could just start over from scratch. There's just no way. So throw that one option out the window because it just isn't going to be possible. What we actually decided to do was refactor and incrementally rebuild certain parts of the software. And to do that, we use the Strangler Fig pattern. People in the room, have you heard of the Strangler Fig pattern before? Okay, a couple of you. So this is actually a real phenomena that happens in nature. You have a healthy tree, and somewhere or another, a seed of the strangler fig plant is dropped by like a bird or an insect or whatever on top of this tree. And when that strangler fig seed starts to grow, it grows from the top of the tree to the bottom, and it makes vines. And all these little vines go around the main trunk of the tree, and it has, the top end of sun hitting it, so it grows pretty fast. And it becomes this system that's wrapped around the main tree. And eventually, it eats up all the resources of the soil, the sun, and the water, and the main tree in the middle dies. So this actually happens in nature, and that's where this software pattern comes from. The strangler fig pattern is basically we're going to take over and eventually get rid of the thing in the beginning. So from a software perspective, it looks like this. You actually create a facade on top of your software. In today's world, you can think about that as maybe like a proxy or other tools. And you start intercepting the main requests, and you send the majority of them at the beginning to your legacy application, the green box on the left. And the modern new starting point gets just a small set of feature requests. And you launch the facade, you intercept the requests, and you start routing people to two places. Hopefully you make those two places look pretty darn similar so that you don't have a crazy user experience. Sometimes people make it drastically different. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd keep the experience the same so you're not noticing the difference that much. But then as you build the next set of features, you start modernizing component by component. Eventually, the legacy box starts to shrink, and more of those requests go to your new modern box, to where the facade's working, you're modernizing piece by piece over time, not one big bang approach, and eventually you're able to shut off the legacy application all the way because now the new modern thing has all of the parts and pieces. If you are curious more about that, there's a link here at the bottom to the Microsoft Learn docs. They kind of go over the whole strangler fig pattern. This is a major technique that we use for Youth Center. We literally actually just finished getting to like the only modern part of it about a year ago. It took many years to work on many components to get them into the modern stack that we are now, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if you're going to do this at home, if you have a big legacy application, one great thing to do, that facade layer, is YARP, yet another reverse proxy. Great name for that, I think. It's, again, a free kind of open source repo that Microsoft provides, so I would recommend it if you want to start. And that's the approach that we took to start refactoring the components. But what you do have to do is kind of inventory and audit your system to break it down into parts and pieces so you can move certain things at a time, right? That's kind of important. That has allowed us to get to this stack today. We're on modern.NET. I think we're on .NET 8 for the majority of things, getting ready to move to 10 here quickly. Angular, Playwright, we support multiple browsers. We use Ionic for the native mobile app. We're actually hosted in the Azure Government Cloud. We got invited by the counties to do that from a security and compliance perspective. We have CI/CD to automate all the deployments, and Azure SQL Server handles all the data. So we're really kind of happy to be able to get to these modern points in technology because that's allowed the team to actually not have to remember so much legacy and actually be able to learn the new platforms and be happy with them. So one of the ones that was really tough was going away from all the SQL store procedures. That took a ton of time to get that logic into EF Core and Web API calls. But now we're pretty much API first, and it is a lot more fun to work with than the classic KSP stuff. As I said a moment ago, though, the compartmentalize and componentize, the breaking apart each parts and pieces, that's really critical to help the product owner understand the health of those parts and pieces and put it into the tech debt product backlog. So what we do is we kind of grade and score each one of these boxes in our ecosystem of the product. So right now, we're really pretty modern on the data access layer, the SQL storage, our API gateway, anywhere that there's green is basically the things that we're pretty modern on. The things that are not there enough or maybe lagging pretty far behind, we actually score as kind of a red, where we're not touching it right now. We understand there's some issues. We have some front-end work that we need to clean up. And then the yellow are things that are either about to start or are blocked by something. So I really encourage you, if you have a big piece of software, to start thinking about it in these buckets and maintaining a score over time so that you keep everyone in the organization, really visible to the health of what that is. This is a nice helper for us. We also recommend using automated code scanning tools like Dependabot and others to keep you up to date on when things need to change, when things, and especially third-party dependencies and vulnerabilities happen, and then using the supported software versions. Basically, don't stay on ASP Classic. Try to get to .NET 10 as fast as you can, basically. We can't have a discussion today at SurTrack in 2026 without talking about AI, and that's where I'm going to do a little bit more of how this is even changing in the last 8 months for us compared to the last 10 years. And like I said, got to talk about AI at a conference. But this is a journey that's still relatively new with us, but we have had a developer actually score what it takes to manually modernize parts of our API controllers in the MVC layer. And for that person to do it with basically 2 smaller tests, to use the 6 controllers and 30, whatever the number is, doesn't necessarily matter a ton. But the problem is there's hundreds of these controllers in our software, so we had to start somewhere. So with the .NET Upgrade agents that are capable today of modernizing things, the 6 manual moves took about 40 hours for that developer. And when you multiply the 40 hours across 208 other controllers, there's just no way. So we started to use AI and point them at those controllers, and it's down to about 100 hours to hit the rest of them. I have to tell you, our team is a little behind in some of the modern things and the way that .NET works with the migration tools. So they were afraid of doing this, and we've been pushing them forward. But now they're starting to see the cost saves. They're starting to see how fast we can modernize these things, and what does the modernization look like to go from old style controller code in the old world to what modern .NET is. And once we were able to paste the good examples and bad examples into Copilot chat, it was able to deliver those results even faster. So being able to modernize that with parts and pieces was pretty important. Now I would recommend using the Copilot app upgrade for modernization tool that's out. That is a huge thing. It's a big part of what you can do to make this go even faster as opposed to kind of rolling your own, but that would be a whole different session, so I'm not going to get into all of it. But here's the last set of takeaways that I want to make sure that you can take away from my talk. Make a public roadmap for your software. This was an example of one that we started doing about roughly 10 years ago and have been kind of doing it ever since. A public roadmap allows you to communicate with your customers when they're going to see their needs and updates happen, as well as to keep your internal team on the right side of, hey, we have targets we need to hit. We can't just work on the new shiny thing or the big burning fire and completely ignore the rest of these targets. These are the things that move the software forward. These are the things that generate recurring revenue. So that's why we try to have quarterly releases, and we try to say, when the use center will have these aspects. So that's one thing that I would make sure you do, is have that public roadmap. This is the other thing that I don't see often in many organizations that we deal with. They don't actually have a planning stage for tech debt right in their epics or sprints or planning or however they do it. So we today keep an epic open always, and we associate about 30% of our capacity throughout the year to just modernize and just work on tech debt, because software changes so much, and even in the AI era, the way vulnerabilities are coming out left and right, I would highly recommend doing that, as well as your other features. Like, so this screen shows that we're working with Auth0 and some other product enhancements, and a big feature at the bottom called Report Manager 2.0. But if you don't plan for tech debt, it gets forgotten. It gets forgotten way too easy. So I would definitely plan it a lot for that. And there's a feature. The other things that we've learned is the RICE prioritization framework is huge. It really helps understand what you should do next with an actual scoring system behind it. Like I said, about 30% of your internal spend should be around maintenance of the product. Listen to your customers. Don't only listen to your internal team. They're going to give you feedback that you may have ever realized, and the feedback that you get from them is definitely a gift. Have that high-level roadmap and publish it, and consider having a customer advisory board for how to do that. And that's the business side. Compliance. Fun thing there, but that's really specific to my industry, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. From the technical side, one of the things that we didn't do early on is really kind of lean into CI/CD. Now we make that an absolute requirement, and I'm assuming that in most software projects today that you have that, but it's a good reminder. Try to automate the creation of environments, infrastructure as code, CI/CD. Use all those tools. Don't ignore them if you're building a SaaS tool. Don't let security be an afterthought, like I mentioned at the beginning. It's pretty important and would cause a lot of tech rework. Don't always jump to the new cool technology thing, even though that new framework, like something just comes out. It's not always the best to be able to apply that to a long-running piece of software. Stay up to date on the frameworks and roadmaps of the platform, and don't ignore security vulnerabilities and dependencies. I know some of these things sound like no-brainers, but when you have a product owner planning things and they don't associate time for this, it's kind of a big miss. Documentation is important. It's actually becoming even more important in today's world with the way AI agents can read documentation and understand your application. For a long time, we didn't have hardly any docs on the software, and it was a challenge. Obviously, AI is something that's hugely important to remember to use as well, but that would be a different session altogether. This is the team that builds Youth Center back at our office. So they're celebrating one of our launches, and they're very happy about that. But honestly, that's what I have for y'all today. Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned that kind of pushing off the security and compliance stuff really bit you hard later down the line. Can you speak more to that, like what happened and why it was such a problem?
Yeah, so the security and compliance, how we pushed that off, and it bit us really hard. One of the things we underestimated was in this tool, anytime someone makes a change to any field in any row of any data, we needed to log that to an audit log, and only certain users could need to do that. So we didn't have a role and permission system that would track like a before and after state of knowing when things changed and being able to push that into an audit log. Because for government compliance, you need to be able to know at any point in time for like the last 7 years, where was the status of this case? And not having it at the beginning was a disaster because it applied across the data layer, the table structures weren't right, as well into the application layer. We had no way to like assign roles and permissions. And we had done, way back then it was like it was like the .NET 2 membership style roles and permissions. They just weren't robust enough to handle that sort of field level in different structures that we needed. So we had to like rip apart everything and rebuild stuff from like all the layers of the application. So that's what I'm trying to say is like, it was bad. And then the compliance aspect, we have to be what's called CJIS compliant. It's the Criminal Justice Information Standards or Security Standards. And it's actually something that comes from the FBI because of the type of data that we have and where we store it. There is all sorts of encryption differences that we didn't have to the right strength of level of encryption. That we needed to, again, kind of rework and everything in and out of structures need to be encrypted and all that kind of good stuff. So it was definitely a learning process for us. Cool. Any other questions? Yes?
For your vulnerabilities and dependencies, are you lumping those in your 30% tech debt or are those tracked?
Yeah, it depends. So the question is, for vulnerabilities, are we lumping those into our tech debt or not? Yes, if it's not a like critical like 7 or 8.0 score higher in the CVE score, it kind of goes into a higher priority tech debt. But if it's the like a 7, 8, 9, 10 super critical, we pretty much will jump that right to the front of the queue because we're supposed to again stay in compliance. We have to. There's only a certain amount of days that we can allow those to be in any parts of the software. But yeah, I would consider that tech debt for sure. Another one.
I have more of a product question. How did you avoid having all the counties go to something like PeopleSoft towards your product?
Okay, so the question is, how do we avoid all the counties going to something like PeopleSoft and actually use our software instead? Well, to show that, I'm going to kind of, well, I don't know if I can go back all the way, but the, I would say the workflow of the intake process for a youth in the system needs to be customizable per county, and what they track also needs to be customizable per county. So we built a flexible system for that to where we can onboard and do different things for different counties with tons of feature flags and things like that, where PeopleSoft kind of out of the box, I don't think would have that capability. And we can show very specific customer scenarios for each county, and we already have them all over the place. So out of the box software isn't quite capable of doing what we do without a lot of customization. Thanks. Okay, everybody, go enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you for attending.